Hey folks, Iolair here. Today's video is a follow-up to my review of the brand new premium Tier 5 U.S. Navy battleship, the USS Oklahoma. I've had quite a few folks ask me to draw a comparison between the Oklahoma and the Texas now that we have two premium Tier 5 U.S. Navy battleships. So I'll look to do that here. I'll do some comparison between their different specifications so you can see which ship is going to tend to perform or be stronger than the other. But the too long didn't read version of this is generally the Texas is going to be the better overall performer, I expect, based on just basically on the details of these ships. Now, they are going to be relatively close to each other in terms of overall performance, but I do think that Texas is going to be a better fit overall, and I'll offer some hypothesis on that at the end of this video. So let me switch over to the Texas, and then I'll talk about how that compares with the Oklahoma. So the armor layouts for both of these ships are mostly the same, but there is one notable difference. So they will both have 19 millimeter bows and sterns. That will mean that they will be overmatched by all battleship AP calibers in the game, even the 283 millimeter AP from the Scharnhorst. They have 19 millimeter casemate armor. They have 13 millimeter superstructure. Their turrets are pretty equally armored, although the Oklahoma is somewhat better. The main difference between these ships in terms of their armor is their citadel protection. So my assessment, just based on looking at their specifications as well as some empirical experience playing against the New York class battleships, of which the Texas is one of the two, is that the citadel on the Texas is and the New York is relatively easy to reach. I have definitely hit the Texas and New York for Citadel hits pretty much at any range. I have also deleted Texas and New York ships in drive-by situations. So I think that their citadels are probably going to be more vulnerable. When I compare that with the Oklahoma citadel has a larger top plate. It sits a little lower in the water, but it also has this sloped deck that acts a little bit like a turtleback. So again, I have not been in a drive-by situation with an Oklahoma. I have not had the experience of either being citadeled, at least from the side. I do think I had a citadel through the bow, but I have not been experiencing citadels nor getting citadels against Oklahomas, if at all. So I think the armor benefit is probably to the Oklahoma, although I don't know how much real benefit overall it's going to be. Now, as for survivability, the Texas has slightly more hit points, about 900 more hit points, where their main difference is that the Texas has much better torpedo protection at 31%, compared to the 18% of the Oklahoma. So here the Texas does have an advantage. Next difference is going to be in the guns. And here I think the Texas is going to be pretty clearly the winner here. She has a almost 6-second faster reload. She fires the same 10 356 millimeter guns, but the penetration characteristics of these shells are very different between the two ships. The Texas and New York have the highest armor penetrating characteristics of 356 millimeter guns at Tier 5 in the game, whereas the Oklahoma has, for some reason, a very poor Krupp characteristics, meaning armor penetration. So they are probably more likely to not overpenetrate some of the softer targets than the New York and Texas will. But because the Texas has a faster reload with only a slightly shorter range of 19 kilometers, this is with the artillery plotting room 1 upgrade in slot 3. The Oklahoma's range is slightly longer at 19.9, but the sigma is the same at 1.8, and the dispersion is very similar. So in general, I think the guns here are going to perform better. Now, where the Oklahoma has an advantage over the Texas in terms of the gun handling is the Oklahoma has a more traditional turret layout, whereas the Texas has this very dreadnought style layout where she has a turret dead center that requires her to give a lot of side to get that center turret into play. And so the Oklahoma's turret handling will actually be better than on the Texas. But again, in terms of the overall experience, the Texas I expect is going to be better in terms of her main caliber or main battery capabilities. Now, where the Oklahoma has an advantage in the artillery is in the secondaries. So the Texas, her base secondary range is 4 kilometers. With the artillery plotting room, one upgrade in slot 3, it gets a 5% boost. But the Oklahoma has significantly more guns for secondaries, many, in fact, more than double. And they have a base 5.5 kilometer range. And with the artillery plotting room 1 upgrade in slot 3, they go out to 5.8. Now, I am waiting for data from Little White Mouse to confirm the dispersion characteristics of the secondaries on the Oklahoma. It was stated that she would have better accuracy on her secondaries when she was originally announced by Wargaming, waiting to confirm that's the case. So in secondary engagements, the Oklahoma is going to be the winner here. But again, that's going to be the minority of games, not the majority. To me, what's more important is the main battery performance. And again, there, I think the Texas is going to be stronger. Next is AA, and there's pretty much not going to be any dispute here. The Texas was built as an AA platform, modified New York class. The main disadvantage that the Texas has over the Oklahoma is her AA range. Her AA range is actually quite poor at 3.5 kilometers, whereas the Oklahoma has a 4.8 kilometer range. But the number of AA batteries that the Texas has is vastly superior to the Oklahoma. So while the Oklahoma will start hitting planes with their AA earlier than the Texas should still outperform the Oklahoma here quite easily. Next, with regard to maneuverability, these ships are going to be quite similar. The Texas is 8/10 of a knot faster than the Oklahoma. And for all intents and purposes, to me, that's almost negligible. I mean, the experience difference between 19.7 and 20.5 just really isn't that big. The turning circle radius or radii are also relatively close. The Oklahoma has a little bit of an edge here with a 610 meter turning circle, whereas the Texas is 650. And also the Oklahoma's rudder shift is a little faster at 13.4 seconds, whereas the Texas is 14. But again, all of these characteristics are relatively close. So while technically speaking, the Oklahoma might be a little more maneuverable, the Texas is a little faster. I think the overall experience there is going to be about the same. Lastly is concealment, and here the Oklahoma has a clear advantage. The Oklahoma's best concealment is 11.8 kilometers, which is very stealthy for a Tier 5 battleship. The Texas is more traditional at a 14-kilometer best concealment. So here the Oklahoma is going to have potentially a significant advantage in terms of positioning and being able to engage and disengage at closer ranges. So the bottom line to me, especially because the gun performance on the Texas is going to be stronger, I generally expect that the Texas is going to perform somewhat better overall. The only way to know this for sure, however, would be to collect data from preferably tens of thousands of games between the two ships and see how they are performing relative to each other. It may be that characteristics like the better concealment of the Oklahoma and her better turret handling might give her an edge in some ways in terms of her main battery capabilities, and that the overall effect is, even though the Oklahoma has a longer reload, it might end up being that overall she performs about the same. Now, I've seen a lot of comments in various forums, whether that be on the World of Warships forums and Reddit, Facebook, etc., about players complaining about how the Oklahoma was, well, I don't know if she was mistreated, but that Wargaming basically didn't treat her very well in terms of how she got introduced. The only aspect of the ship that I think I am questioning is really the Krupp value, meaning the armor penetration characteristics of the AP. It seems uncharacteristically low for what it was. There was a point during the testing of the Oklahoma that her penetration characteristics were being adjusted upwards, but then were returned back to their original values. That part to me is less clear why that would be. Overall, however, since the Oklahoma is a free ship, I can see that from Wargaming's perspective, they might not want to offer a free ship that is equal or outperforms a ship that people pay for, like the Texas, although they've had some promotions that have given the Texas away for free as well. So I can see in some sense that you wouldn't want to produce a premium at the same class, nation, and tier and have that be free and outperform a ship that you pay for. Why would you pay for the one ship if you could play a free ship that performs better? That's just kind of a personal hypothesis around this. But frankly, I think overall the ships are going to be very similar in terms of their of the player experience. And again, I think it's mainly going to come down to maybe the reload and certainly the armor penetration, where I think people will tend to have questions about the Oklahoma. So that is kind of my overall assessment comparing these two ships, at least on paper. Like I said, getting a good comparison empirically requires collecting data across thousands of games, which we don't have yet. So hopefully this assessment was clear to you. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And as always, we hope to see you out there in the virtual seas, and we wish you happy sailing.